Hello everyone, welcome to week 2. I hope everything is going well so far. This week we're going to be talking about terrorism associated with Christianity. Something important to think about and remember, for the next few weeks we're going to be talking about some case studies in the various religions, that have had terrorism associated with them. Remember that we're not talking about mainstream religious views here. We're not talking about mainstream, Christian viewpoints or mainstream Christian denominations. Okay, just like as we get into other religions, we're not going to be talking about mainstream religious viewpoints for those religions as well. Because as we learned last week, many different religions have been associated with terrorism throughout their history. All right, so for this week, there's 2 readings this week. One is the chapter called Soldiers for Christ in the Jurgensmeyer book, and then there's an article by Chip Berlet that I've included in Blackboard. We're really only going to talk about the Jurgensmeyer chapter here because there's not enough time to make videos. It'd be a super long video to talk about all of it. So we're going to talk about Jurgensmeyer here. But make sure you do read Berlet. Berlet examines Christian identity religion in a little more detail from various viewpoints, because Christian identity, is, in my opinion at least, is probably the most terrorism-related, most dangerous version of Christianity that's been associated with terrorism. So the Jurgensmeyer chapter is essentially just a collection of different case studies of various different actors or groups that have committed terrorist acts in the name of Christianity. Okay, and then, like I said, Berlet looks at Christian identity a little bit more closely. But as you read the various case studies, you'll see that each of the people or groups highlighted have various different reasons for why they committed their terrorist acts. And even though this is kind of an overarching Christianity discussion, you're going to find there's quite a few different viewpoints within each of these various people. So the first is Anders Breivik, and this happened over in Norway, and he killed 67 people at a youth camp in Norway. They were part of a liberal youth camp. He went in there and killed a bunch of them. An interesting thing about him is that he really was not a self-avowed Christian. He really didn't call himself Christian, but rather he referred to himself as an Odinist, which is a follower of Odin, which is a pagan religion associated with Northern Europe from the Viking days. There's been a resurgence of Odinism here in the last 20 years or so. But Odinism is a very historical type religion, and it actually has quite a bit of, I don't say quite a bit, it's fairly prominent within white supremacist viewpoints as well. There are a fair number of Odinists within that far right kind of category. But even though he didn't view himself as a self-avowed Christian, he did view himself as defending the heritage of European Christendom against the Muslims and against multiculturalism. So in his manifesto, he wanted to recreate the Knights Templar. If you're familiar with that, they were the ones that did the Crusades, against the Muslims back. I don't remember what year, but like around the year 1000, when they all went to Jerusalem to try to recapture the Holy Land during the Crusades. So his main focus was on fighting multiculturalism and the cultural Marxist, who he likened to the Nazis of old. And by his attack, he viewed himself as firing the first shots of what he thought would be a protracted struggle to drive out Muslims and restore white rule to Europe. He published about a 1,500-page manifesto that he hoped others would read and would spur others to take up arms. Obviously, he was not successful. But that's a fairly common theme, too, with not just the ones we're going to talk about this week, but a lot of these groups, a lot of these people feel like they're the ones that are going to kick off this big revolution that's going to bring about all these changes that they want, or is going to restore whatever viewpoint that they want in the world. And they feel like their attack is the one that's going to kick everything off, and everybody's going to wake up, and they're just going to be like, oh man, I'm glad somebody finally did this. I've been waiting for, something to start this. And it doesn't happen. All right, so the second case study was about Timothy McVeigh, an Oklahoma City bombing in 1996. There's a lot in this particular section here. Juergensmeyer kind of jumps around a little bit in here. But essentially McVeigh detonated a truck bomb at the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. And there were religious aspects to his attack. There was also some non-religious aspects. It was in retaliation for Waco. It was in retaliation for Ruby Ridge. There were a lot of anti-government reasons that had nothing to do with religion or Christian identity religion for why he did what he did. And there are some similarities between him and Anders. But one major difference is McVeigh did not write a manifesto. A lot of, when you hear about terrorists, in the news, whatever, oftentimes they'll leave some manifesto they want people to read. McVeigh didn't do that. McVeigh actually, there's a book, it's called the Turner Diaries. And it's a very, very popular book among white supremacists. A lot of them view it kind of as their Bible, so to speak. So what McVeigh did is he copied parts of his favorite book and would hand out these to people. And he would also go to gun shows and sell the Turner Diaries for very cheap, just trying to get that message out there. And the Turner Diaries actually talks quite a bit about what he did. It almost is a kind of a step-by-step manual for how to bomb a federal building. If you ever read the book, of course, if you buy the book now, you'll probably get put on a watch list somewhere. But it's quite a bit of detail, and if you look at it, McVeigh followed it pretty close to the letter for what he had ended up doing. But anyway, that book was written by William Pierce under the pseudonym of Andrew McDonald. William Pierce was a big dog in the white supremacist world for a long time until his death. But he founded the National Alliance, and that was one of the most influential white nationalist groups for a very long time. So McVeigh was at least in part influenced by Christian identity ideas. And essentially Christian identity states that Christians are superior and it's by divine right. So obviously it's a corrupted form of Christianity, but it's founded in this concept called British Israelism. Now, British Israelism views or states that the lost tribe of Israel ended up in the British Isles, and actually European whites are descended from that lost tribe of Israel, and they're not Jewish. So actually, European whites, Aryans, are the chosen people of God rather than Jewish people. So this religion is virulently anti-Semitic. It's racist. It refers to minorities as mud people. So it very much is anti-Jewish, anti-minority. And it views also that there's a conspiracy between Jews and this New World Order, which includes the United Nations and International Monetary Fund, to take over the world, take away everyone's rights, and subjugate whites. So adherents of Christian identity, they want to do away with organized religion, and they want to do away with separation of church and state and have a society governed by religious law of Christian identity. It's also apocalyptic, in the fact that they view that there's this war coming between free men and the government, and that this war is close at hand. Burlett goes into a lot more detail about Christian identity, and that's why I included that article for this week, because it talks a lot more about Christian identity than what Juergensmeyer did. Also interesting about this whole McVeigh thing is that he was heavily influenced by these Turner Diaries, right, which was written by William Pierce. Well, William Pierce, in turn, founded another religion called cosmotheism. He claimed that this was not related to Christian identity, but it really was. A lot of the main views of his religion was also pretty similar to Christian identity. All right, so the next one, including Jurgensmeyer, is the case of Michael Bray in abortion clinic bombings. Now, Michael Bray and his supporters, followers, whatever you want to call them, they believe that the only way to stop abortions was to bomb clinics and kill doctors who are performing abortions. He's associated with a group called the Army of God, which is a loose collaborative of extreme anti-abortion activists or terrorists. And they have a website. You can go to it still today. Back when I was doing my dissertation research, they were part of my data collection. And that website used to have nothing but just pictures of aborted babies on it. It was really a pretty sickening type of website. If you go to it now, they have a few pictures on it, not like it used to. They have sections idolizing those who've committed violence, such as Paul Hill and others that you read about in Jurgensmeyer. So Bray and his followers, in their view, the only way to stop abortion is to bomb these clinics and kill people. And they view these attacks as being defensive in that they're protecting the babies from being murdered. They don't actually view it as being punitive. And he specifically states that he would not kill a retired abortion doctor, only those that were actively performing abortions. So they justify their violence in the doctrine of just war, which is from religious tradition. Just war was used a lot for like the Crusades and things like that. So it states that use of violence is allowed if it's proportional and more lives would be saved through the use of violence and would be lost through its use. However, he's obviously taken that concept and moved it away from the intended uses within the church. He also adheres to a theology called Reconstruction theory, whose proponents want to create a Christian theocratic state. And they view that Protestantism has become corrupted since the time of Martin Luther and the Reformation, and that it's their goal then to reconstruct society, every aspect of society, to their view of what a Christian society should be. And this is kind of a fringy, type of theology. And even within that fringy theology, he's gone to another kind of fringe of that theology. So not even within this Reconstruction theology does everyone agree with how he goes about his business or that violence should even be used. So essentially Bray has taken bits and parts of different viewpoints from different parts of Christian theology and uses the ones that he feels like justify what he is trying to do. All right, so then finally, Jurgensmeyer discusses the violence in Northern Ireland that's been going on for a long time. And there's certainly religious tones and aspects of that conflict between Catholics and Protestants, but it's really mostly a conflict over the fact that Britain possesses Ireland and the Irish don't want them there. It's a colonialism struggle more than anything. But it has gotten complicated. There are religious aspects to it. The Irish are Catholic. The British are Protestants. So there is some religion interjected into this, and the church and the Pope and the Catholic Church, everybody's gotten involved in this thing. So there has been quite a bit of religion interjected into this struggle, but at its core, it really isn't a struggle about Catholic versus Protestant. This is a conflict over territory more than anything. All right, so with that, I'm going to stop. Be sure you read the article by Burlett. Complete the assignments for this week in Blackboard. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get a hold of me. I'll see you next week.